Hello everyone, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is the Haven Ascension Ceremony. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of Astral Club, you can do so with the link in the description. And with a Patreon membership, you get a library of downloaded episodes that you can put on your podcast app and listen to wherever you like. There's no commercials, email where we can talk back and forth, and I can answer questions for you. You can share your experiences, and of course there is advanced videos on Sunday. If you're interested in private lessons, there is an email also in the description where you can contact me for information on lesson to learn how to astral project or to tune up your abilities. If you recall from the prior episodes, or the prior episode rather, I had visited my planet, which I have now named Terra Nova, or New Earth, and I went there to visit, and I went about 1 billion years in the future, and I went there to visit and see what life had developed. And I found some plant life, and that had some interesting characteristics. If you haven't seen or listened to that episode, I encourage you to do so. But towards the end of my survey, even though I didn't know it was the end at the time, I received a strange signal, which I almost recognized, but it seemed like a long ago memory that I'd forgotten. But it was gentle, and I decided to follow it. So I left Terra Nova, and when I regained consciousness, I found myself on Planet Haven, my probably most favorite place in the universe. Haven, of course, is a planet which is home to a race of intelligent plants that evolved over a long period of time to become hyper-intelligent and very evolved. And if you have missed those episodes or you're new to the channel, you can go to the playlist of Space and Aliens on this Astral Club, and you can review the episodes that feature Planet Haven. So, the last time I'd been there, I'd asked them to wipe my my mind of the ident for Haven, because I didn't want to risk polluting this paradise in case somebody was able to hack my mind, especially during the war. I didn't want to risk it, but it's a paradise, and I don't want that stolen from me. So I didn't expect that I'd ever see it again, because with the ident erased, there was no way for me to get there. But they had summoned me. And when I arrived on the familiar shore, and it's just such a beautiful place. It's right near this, it's right by this inlet or bay. The waters are just wonderfully blue-green. The vegetation is a color green I've never seen. It's so beautiful. It all seems to glow, too, with this beautiful white and yellowish light. And the atmosphere is just calm and peaceful. It's unlike really anything I've ever quite experienced here on Earth. So when I arrived, I was extremely happy, and a delegation of the Havenites met me, and when they speak to me, they're speaking to me as a whole. So I try to interpret it the best way I can into a single voice, because it's too hard to translate it into English exactly the way they're sending it to me. So I have to take liberties in my translation, because otherwise this would be unintelligible. So what I found out was that there was an Ascension ceremony coming up. Now, the Havenites exist in the high third dimension, but they also can easily transit to the fourth dimension. And they go back and forth whenever they wish. So they get the best of the ascension process, i.e. the fourth dimension, but they also are able to go back into the high third to experience and learn lessons within a physical, in this case, plant body. However, when the Havenites, who exist as a unified people, but they are divided into pods, which the best way I can describe that is it's like an extended family group. When a pod decides that it's ready for a permanent ascension, then it notifies the people as a whole. And an ascension ceremony is arranged whereby they transition as a pod permanently onto the spiritual or the fourth dimensional plane, leaving behind the third plane and their physical bodies permanently. This is a somewhat infrequent ceremony, and I was informed by my friends that this would be the first time that someone from off-world was invited to attend this ceremony. So I was extremely complimented. And at this point in time, I said, well, great. Where do I go? What do I have to do? And they said, well, you're going to have to go to the Crystal Temple because we need to do healing and preparation work on you to prepare you for this Ascension ceremony, because it's a very energetic ceremony. And if you're not, what's the word they used? I don't know, highly tuned, it's probably the closest I can get to it. It could actually be unpleasant because of the energies that are exerted as this pod ascends. Naturally, I was intrigued. I remembered my last visit to their crystal temple, which is an enormous quartz crystal mountain, which looks to me to be naturally occurring, but they tunneled through it using some sort of a smooth bore type of, I have no idea. I would say if we did it, it would be some sort of a smooth bore machine, but they don't have machinery like we do. So they use some form of energy to form this very smooth and long tunnel into the center of this quartz crystal cathedral. So I said, yeah, I'm interested. Let's do this. Not to mention, I could always use a tune-up, right? So you could tell they were happy that I was eager to take part and that I was respectful. We've always had a good relationship. I said, okay, great, let's lead and I'll follow. And we walked a short ways again, and there was the big mountain. As soon as we came out of some foliage, it was standing there, and I recall the entrance was there, and I walked in there with my friends. But when we got to the entrance, they told me that inside there was a representative of the southern group of Havenites, who was the greater pod family of the pod that was going to ascend, and that in their culture, it's their duty to preside over the ceremonies. The others, of course, are welcome, but their greater pod is in charge of it. And then they were therefore in charge of purifying my vibrations. I didn't really notice any difference between the two of them, but then again, my guess is if Havenites came to Earth, they wouldn't see any differences between us because they would say, well, look, you're a human and the other one's a human. They wouldn't even notice the level of melanin in someone's skin, for instance, which is very apparent to us, but is not so apparent to aliens. At any rate, they didn't look any different to me, so I just followed in with these new Southern friends. I was wondering if they'd have a telepathic accent like y'all, but no, I didn't. I noticed a little bit of a different way of them speaking, but nothing quite as extreme as we have here in the States. So we went in, and once again, after going through the long tunnel, we emerged in this enormous amphitheater, which was it looked to me like the inside circumference was about the size of a football field. So we're talking a very large area in there, and the energy just coming from this cathedral was exhilarating. My body was already buzzing, and they hadn't even done anything yet. They asked me to lie down on the crystalline floor, which I did. And then a whole group of them started singing. They circled me, and then they started, I guess, singing. Now, they don't have mouths like we do, but the vibrations that came from them can best be described as the most heavenly music you can imagine. And it started out at a lower frequency, and I could feel the vibrations just going through my body as if my blood was already being stirred up into currents. Even though, of course, in my astral body I didn't have blood. But that was the feeling that I got. And as they continued to get higher and higher in frequency, they began to walk around me. And I could just feel my vibratory level just reaching a point where it was almost too much for me to bear. I mean, imagine so much happiness and so much positive energy vibrating throughout your form that it's almost too much, and they could tell. They took me right up to the edge where I felt I was just going to blast apart into a zillion pieces, and it was going to be the best experience of my life. And then they were done. And they gradually descended once again in the reverse, gradually lowering their singing till they got to the point where they were finished. And I was just alive with energy. I was just filled with happiness and joy. It was at this time that I noticed, because I'd been in my own world, that the hall was now filled with Havenites, which I had been totally oblivious to. I had been in another world. And in the center was a clear circle, which filed about roughly about 150 Havenites, which I guess was the pod that was looking to ascend to the fourth dimension permanently. And they all stood together in a group, all of their bodies pressed together, and they interlinked themselves with their branches so that they became one solid mass of Havenites. They began the chant, which was different from what I had just gone through, but it was also similar. I could feel just the pure energy, and it was echoing off of the crystal cathedral too. And then the crystal cathedral started singing. It started vibrating. I wish I could describe in a more eloquent way what was going on, but it was just this purification that was going on, just wiping away any lower energies and just bolstering the energies of everyone in the room. And as the pod that was ascending began to sing and go higher and higher in vibration, all of those around them, first it was a group of Southerners, which I believe had surrounded them. And then filling out the rest of the room were my friends and all the rest of the Havenites that had come to this ceremony. And as this was a fairly large room, there was a lot of Havenites there. I don't know the number. Like I said, I just kind of counted the pod that was ascending to get a basic idea as to what they considered a pod. And then they joined in, and so did I. And I suddenly realized that I knew this song too. And it was the strangest feeling that I felt like I'd known this all my life, and I was singing too. And as things reached a crescendo and just grew higher and higher, more and more energy, the forms of the Havenites that were ascending started becoming more indistinct. As a group, they began to disappear from my vision, and then they were light. It was one massive light, like a small sun in the middle of that crystal cathedral. And everyone, including myself, was just singing our hearts out in joy to wish them well on their journey. And within a few minutes, they were gone. They had disappeared. And there was this wash of joy that went over the entire assemblage. I mean, imagine the energy that's generated in the stands here on Earth and in a football stadium, whether it's American football or soccer. I guess everybody calls it football in the rest of the world, but whatever. In American football, when a Super Bowl team wins, the energy that is generated by all of those excited people and that applause, I would say that that was probably 1,000th of the energy that was felt and amplified within this crystal cathedral. Now that the ceremony was gone and everyone started returning to normal, everyone started quietly filing out. And then I filed out last, along with the Southerners who had helped me prepare for this ceremony. I'm glad they did, because I can imagine if I had just taken part in that without prior preparation, I think it would have been very uncomfortable for me. Kind of like, just sticking your finger in an active light socket or an outlet, an electrical outlet, without knowledge of what you were doing. So I filed out. I was still feeling extremely, high in the purest sense of the word. And we returned to my typical landing spot. I thanked my hosts profoundly, and they bowed to me in their way, thanking me for honoring them with my presence, which I thought was just, it's just the kind of race they are. I'm constantly humbled being in the presence of beings like this. So I was sorry to say goodbye to them again. But before I left, I said, please, once again, I want you to wipe your ident from my mind, because I don't want to risk, anything stealing this ident from me. If you ever want me to return again, please just send out that same invitation and I will return. So with that, I faded back into unconsciousness, and I awoke buzzing in my body. Now, when I return to my body from an intense astral projection, I'm often buzzing, but this time I was just hugely buzzing with energy and couldn't even go back to sleep at that point. I was up pretty much for the rest of the night, but that's okay. I was very happy to have that level of insomnia this time around. If you liked this experience, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please hit that bell button. Make sure it's solid so you're notified on Wednesday afternoon and Saturday morning when there's new episodes posted. And I'd be very interested in your questions and comments as always. And this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.